concise and brief and straight to the point, but full of a wealth of knowledge. Let's appreciate Mr. Osborne Yogo once more. Now on to our third session. We will be hearing from Mr. Alphonce Ochola. He is an alumni of the Jomo Kenyatta University of Agriculture and Technology, JKUAT, where he studied actuarial science, and he is currently an actuarial analyst in the insurance sector, that is in Liberty Insurance. He will be speaking to us on rethinking budget allocations for campus security. And when we talk of campus security, it is fiscal security, not any other type of security that we may have had in mind. He will be speaking to us on strategically aligning our campus fiscal allocations to the academic year's goals. So I know the student leaders who are here, we have budgetary allocations that we have prepared with our teams. So how do we ensure that these budgetary allocations fall in line with the vision, as Mr. Osborne has said, and the goals we have set, and how do we ensure that we are kept accountable with these finances that are entrusted in our hands. So with a round of applause, I would like us to appreciate and welcome on stage Mr. Alphonce Ochola. Let's appreciate him. Until he arrives.
To the Cabinet Secretary for National Treasury in his absentia, to my fellow panelists, and the entire student leaders fraternity. Good afternoon. Well, first of all, you'll have to pardon my eloquence, because ideally you can't compare me with my co-panelist, whose years of experience is more than my age as far as my existence in this world is concerned. Ladies and gentlemen, I have no kids in Kenya School of Law. I have no kids at KCA University. And to sum it all, I don't even have their mother. Well, my journey as Ochola Alphonce starts somewhere at Kisumu County. We are those guys who attended schools which, when you label their names, they sound like insults at the primary level. When I thought that after passing my KCP education, I will have the opportunity to run away from that rural area, my grandmother could not fathom the fact that it was more probable for me to leave her alone as the only human resource she used to depend on back at home. So then it was again another journey to go to that high school, whose name again, when you mention it, it's still sounding like an insult. So it is at that moment that one day our principal decided to take us to a motivational walk at the University of Masinde Muliro. How many from Masinde Muliro are here? Yes, thank you so much. So when I was at Masinde Muliro as a benchmarking student for my former high school, I noticed something that campus students were doing. A gentleman came, passed while holding the hands of a lady, and on my mind I thought, wow, campus is such an amazing place to be. Because all my relationship needs were suppressed by the fact that I was below 18 years old. My financial, we are not even going to talk about finances when you are still in high school. So the only way you could entice someone was using some 5 bob of mandazis. But ideally, if you studied in a boarding boys high school, I don't think you even had the privilege of seeing ladies around. So the experience at Masinde Muliro University of Science and Technology could later shape the fate of the trajectory of my education. Therefore, when the results for KCSE were finally out, I was only focused on applying for those universities that were very far away from home. So I could hear someone applying Rongo University, and I was like, dude, are you sure? All the entire time I wanted to get out of that place. So ladies and gentlemen, in 2019, I found myself at Jomo Kenyatta University of Agriculture and Technology to pursue BSc in Actuarial Science. Now, when I was a first-year student, I was motivated by the fact that back at home, you are the only first person who have stepped their feet at the higher learning institutions. I could therefore leverage this information to my advantage, because back at home, my parents never had the privilege of supplying you with all the finances that you needed to facilitate your studies. So what did I do? I could tell them that, Mom, today the institution needs, let's say, 1,000 for photosynthesis. Then you use that money, then also come up with a different excuse. So that was my whole surviving journey at the University of Agriculture and Technology. Now, what happened one day? Wasakatonge. So now, one day, as I was sleeping at the hostel at Jomo Kenyatta University, some dude came into that hostel. He saw me lying flat, having no plans for the day, even having no lunch. Now, it's normal. Then she told me if I could join his campaign team to help him support one of the candidates who was running for the finance docket at Jomo Kenyatta University, then I could be assured of at least some lunch and supper. So it was somehow a coincidence to find me having joined politics, something that I never knew about, for the first time. And this is a space where people don't joke, in campus politics. So nevertheless, I joined. Then I started campaigning for that lady. She was called Caro. Unfortunately, she lost. Now, the aftermath of her losing made me realize that at least I can see some potential in me by trying to assess the gaps that she never addressed at that point. Therefore, what happened? I decided to check for my confidence, then step into the political arena. The journey in campus politics was not that smooth. As someone who is coming from a poor background, you don't have the financial muscle that can even persuade people to listen to you. Then it became such a task to convince someone to listen to my ideologies and principles, to buy into my information, to buy into my understanding and perceptions of events and circumstances, without money. Now, when we were running, so I had to step down, be a PA for our presidential candidate then. His name was called Huxley Magak. So being the presidential advisor of Huxley Magak then, I had to tone down all my political ambitions and coil my tail so that I could fit on her way of leadership, on his way of leadership, even though some of them never made sense to me. So what happened then? Jomo Kenyatta had this habit of disqualifying candidates based on zero grounds. Then they could preferably pass their candidate unopposed. Now, even as much as we talk about the Duale Bill, I want to assure you that certain institutions have also contributed to suppressing the voices of the students at various institutions. So then what happened? My presidential candidate had to take the school to court for them to explain to us the basis for the disqualification of our candidate. Now, after that, we won the case. Therefore, the candidate was supposed to be given Kenya shillings 2.5 million worth of damages. Today, as I speak to you, the president who is currently sitting in Jomo Kenyatta University has been duly elected by the delegate system that serves to put leaders in position of power. So it is through that struggle that I had to understand why we need systems that function in our various institutions. Going back to the theme of today, as I was going through the topic, rethinking budget allocation for campus security. First of all, we need to understand the importance of allocating budgets to university institutions. Now, I want to base my presentation on the findings that Dr. Belio Kipsang did present on his report of the education sector. One of his major findings was 11.7% growth in students enrolled in universities and in public and private institutions was recorded in the year 2023 compared to the year 2024. Now, 2023 compared to the year 2022. Now, what does this mean? It means, therefore, then, that there is a significant growth in the student population in university institutions. And therefore, we are not expected to lean on the traditional forms of budgeting, because the traditional forms of budgeting never foresaw the future financial needs of the students as we progress based on at every point in time. Now, one of the major, today if you, for example, I want to use the University of Nairobi. Now, the University of Nairobi, if you look at the capacity of our hostels, they are not enough to cover the 20,000 population that he was talking about. Given the fact that land is a fixed resource, therefore it is very difficult to expand. Now, what are we resorting to? Our students will now go back and start looking for residentials outside the university premises. When you go to residentials outside the university premises, they are always charged at the market rate. And the decision to come up with the market rate for residential places is based on ideally the working class outside who have the financial muscle to pay for those rents. Now, you can't immerse a student at a place whereby any other person there is a parent, they are paying rent worth of 10,000, then you also want the student to be there. Then the following day, you add 1,000 to that amount of money. That means that even there is an outlier of students who can afford a rent of 10,000 shillings. What does this mean? Previously, there was this fancy statement where people will come up on screens and say that, you see, I found my girlfriend from campus, but right now I want to assure you that is no longer the case. In my 4 years at university, I spent most of my years using university as the relay playground of running away from relationships as a coping mechanism. Why? Because I never had, the ladies we had were comparing themselves with us, with the people who could leverage their financial muscle to exercise their high pagamit rates on us. Now, what does that mean? It means, therefore, then, that the only focus there was supposed to be education and education alone. If you are to use your help money to fund any other thing apart from education, it means that you are now going away or astray from whatever you are purposed to do at that particular time. Now, remember the help disbursement program. In 2023, the amount that was allocated under that docket was 31.6 billion. In 2024, the amount that was allocated was 36 billion. And in 2025, the amount that was allocated was around 41.5 billion. If you look at the trend, there is a general increase of an average of 14% towards the allocation of that budget. That means that the amount relating to that increment is around 4.4 billion per year. Why am I bringing this information here today? Because if you compare the rate at which the population is growing in campus, take, for example, the number of people joining campus and the number of people leaving campus, that is the population outflux. Take the difference between the population outflux and the population influx, you will find your net increase in population growth. Now, why am I talking about the net increase in population growth? So that in our budgeting process, we bring data-driven decision making as far as the budgeting allocation is concerned. Why do I say this? Because we cannot say that we are going to allocate a proportionate amount of money to the education program without understanding the key statistical education matrices that underlies that particular allocation. Next, when I was talking about the challenges that students face, I want to address some 4 critical points. Number 1, it's the student's upkeep fee. The next one is the mental health problems that exist due to financial constraints in campus institutions. Another one is inclusivity, and I'm so happy to be part of this program today because moving forward now, with the launch of this program, each and every student is going to take part, to be part and parcel of driving budget-associated decision-making processes. Now, what do I say? I'm saying that it is now incumbent upon the student leaders to ensure that appropriate allocation of resources exists within the decision-making structures as far as university or campus education is concerned. Another thing, there is lack of social amenities. When I was in campus, there was a lady who got sick at night, was admitted at the hospital facilities at Jomo Kenyatta. Then the facility was incapacitated to handle the problem. As she was being transferred to Thika Level 5 hospital, the lady unfortunately died on the way. Remember, these are university institutions where we are even training medics in those particular institutions. So when I say that the problems of the traditional methods of allocating finances could not be flexible enough to foresee the future challenges that the learner will have, I'm right point in time, because when these challenges, they mutate. At one point, we need ICU systems in our institutions. I'm also not oblivious to the fact that students sometimes are getting pregnant. And if your institution has a maternity medical care, please carry up your hand. Yes, thank you. Therefore, the reason why we have to ensure that there is appropriate, we need to rethink about allocating budgets to students, to university institutions, is because of the challenges, that the magnitude of the challenges that we have. Now, before I conclude, I need to talk about one solution that we can offer as far as all these processes are concerned. We need to support student-led research programs, whereby the institution partners with organizations so that they do research. And therefore, our students become part of the formulation of the hypothesis. You are part of the data analysis processes. You become part of the entire process of analyzing information, and you are being paid for all that process. What do I mean? This will enable the students to equip themselves with the necessary funds that they can use to counter their basic needs. Ladies and gentlemen, we also need, given the trajectory that the technology is taking, we are being told that we need to prepare for AI. In future budgeting processes, we also should be keen on seeing that we develop policies that will enhance the institutions or the national treasury to come up with AI labs. Because we can't be talking about AI, taking students to school, then they are now behind technology, and tomorrow we want them to be competent in the workplace. It means, therefore then, that technology is at the core of the budgeting process. I therefore beseech us, ladies and gentlemen, to ensure that we rewire our thinking as far as budgeting allocation process is concerned, to ensure that the flexibility in terms of meeting future financial needs and obligation in our university institutions is concerned. Then, I also ask us to be accountable. It is only prudent of the student leadership to hold to account people who are mismanaging and embezzling funds in our institutions of learning. We can't be having the miscreants, avaricious louts who are running the coffers of our educations dry. Therefore, it means, most probably, that if we continue with the same way of allocation of budgets, we are going to lag behind in terms of development, we are going to suffer, and in fact, all the backbone of this country is education. When Dr. Albert Winsmias was asked about developing Singapore by the then President Lee, he said one thing, that for us to grow a country, we need 4 things to align to the development of a given country. Number 1, we were supposed to lower the taxes. Number 2, train your population. Number 3, fight corruption. And number 4, ensure that there is peace and stability in that country. Therefore, if one of these cores, which is training your population, lags behind, then the entire system of trying to transform a country will collapse. Ladies and gentlemen, let me stop at that point. Thank you so much for listening to me.
Thank you so much, Alphonse. We